It's just mixed messaging all the time.
Yeah.
And I know as a man, you're constantly getting hit with men need to man up. Where have all the good men gone? What happened to chivalry? This and this and this. And then 2 seconds later, it's like toxic masculinity and like this and this. And then with women, they're being pushed overt or covert feminism, not just equal to a man, but like almost the same as a man. It's all trying to like shove women into the man box.
Yeah.
Right? Men are being told you need to be more in touch with your masculine side, but you also need to be more in touch with your feminine side, and women too. And I just think that millions and millions of people, whether or not that they're able to articulate it in this way, they're growing up in that society and in that culture. It's in the media, it's in the movies, it's in the music, it's in everything.
Welcome back to The Observation, Capetown edition. I am here today with Zuby. But before we dive into the podcast, I want to shout out to our sponsors, Cash App. The Observation is powered by Cash App. When personal finance meets your funds and the stuff that matters, that's money, that's Cash App. Download the app, buy Bitcoin, not financial advice. All right, today we're here with Zuby. Zuby is an author, rapper, speaker. He has over 1 million followers on Twitter, and right now he's writing a book. Zuby, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Happy to be here, Aubrey.
Yeah, so, okay, speaking of Bitcoin, which you were just talking about, I saw you tweet about Bitcoin the other day saying that you're stacking sats and you don't care who knows it, and if you didn't you know that you've been accumulating Bitcoin, aka like that's basically what it means, for quite some time now. And you were saying that people get mad about that.
People get mad about everything now, don't they? I mean, it doesn't matter what you do, what you say. If a certain number of people see it, then you're going to get some level of pushback or backlash, and everyone's nose is up in everything, and everyone's mad about everything, and so many people have these hair-triggered tempers and are scrolling through the internet. You know, as we record this, there are millions of people around the world right now who are scrolling through social media looking for something to upset them, looking for something to trigger them, looking for something to react to and respond to and be outraged by, so that they can get that dopamine hit. And it's not very healthy. But I'm stacking my Bitcoin.
So how do you deal with that then? It's like, you know, you're obviously, everyone's free to do what they want with their own money. That's how I feel. I'm a very free market person. But you have people and you're just saying like, hey, I'm doing this, like I'm buying Bitcoin because you obviously believe in it, right?
Yeah. Have done for a long time. I mean, I first got into Bitcoin in 2017. Properly. I'd heard about it for several years before that, but 2017 is when I actually bothered to do some research and to really see what it was all about. And I was sold on the concept actually very quickly. I will not someone who took that long to see the value proposition of it and the upside potential. So I don't spend that much time talking about Bitcoin. I'm not like a quote unquote Bitcoin influencer, someone who's like, a lot of people in that world know me. But it's not the main thing that I talk about. But I think it's an extraordinarily powerful technology. I think it's one of many things that is a potential solution for a lot of the problems that we're having in our countries and in our societies, not just locally, but honestly all around the world. I think that actually when you're somewhere like South Africa, when you're actually in a more developing country, when you're in certain parts of South America, Africa, so on, I think the value proposition of Bitcoin, I'm not going to say something like Bitcoin because there isn't really anything like Bitcoin, but the value proposition becomes more obvious to me. And I've noticed as I travel around, actually, I see more Bitcoin ATMs and places selling Bitcoin and places accepting Bitcoin. I see that more in country I've seen it most in actually is Turkey, which is interesting because they've had like 100% inflation rate or whatever it is. Nigeria has tons of Bitcoin related activity. When I was in Mexico, I see more Bitcoin related stuff in those countries than I see, for example, in the UK or even in most parts of the US. Obviously, there's a lot of Bitcoin and crypto related people within the USA, but in terms of actually kind of visibly seeing it in store windows and things like that, you notice that more in places where inflation isn't just this sort of like slow and quiet problem. It's something that they've been dealing with for decades on a massive level, to the point that, I mean, the amount that currencies have been devalued, people don't even recognize it. Of course, everyone knows that. Everyone's financially aware, knows how much, dollars, pounds, etc. have declined over the past century. But when you look at it even relatively, if you look at many, if you look at the South African rand, if you look at the Nigerian naira, if you look at the Turkish lira, whatever it is, even compared to the exchange rate compared to the dollar to the pound, and you just see how hard they've been pummeled over the decades. Some of them going from being close to parity to being, 400 to 1.
Yeah.
So in places like that, yeah, Bitcoin is volatile. One of the biggest pushbacks against Bitcoin is the volatility. Oh, how can it be a store of value if it can lose 60 to 80% of its value in, dollar value in a year or in 6 months or whatever it is? But if you've got your fiat currency, which is losing way, way, way more than that, then I think the upside is a lot more obvious in those situations.
Yeah, it feels like also being here and just the purchasing power for my dollar when I go out and buy anything. Honestly, quite frankly, I was looking at the menu at the spa and it's like $12 for a massage here. It's insane. And that would never be the price in America. And if you don't get out of the United States, which most people in the United States sometimes just stay there their entire lives, they don't ever see other economies and how they are. They just kind of get pummeled, and there needs to be, in my opinion, like a global currency that a government can't tap into, can't restrict from you. And in America right now, I feel like we're going through such a hard time. And you've been talking about America a lot. And America's kind of going really hard on regulation right now on crypto generally. And it's almost stopping innovation, where places like you mentioned, have Bitcoin ATMs. They're doing things like that, and mostly out of need. But the U.S., what do you think of the U.S. and what's happening? It's a big topic, but you've been talking about it a lot. Like I
do, yeah. I do, and it comes from a lot of reasons. I love the USA, first of all. And I always have. When I was a kid, it's funny, I'm British, but hearing my accent my whole life, most people actually think I'm American, whether I'm in the UK or
Explain that to us, because I don't, like, your whole mapping is so interesting.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in England.
Okay.
When I was a baby, my family moved to Saudi Arabia. My dad got an opportunity to work over there. And so whole family, myself and my 4 siblings, mom and dad, we all moved over to Saudi. I obviously don't remember the move because I was a baby, but so all my earliest childhood memories were in Saudi Arabia. I went to preschool there. I was in school there from kindergarten up until 5th grade. And I went to an international school, which was based off the American system. So the reason why I actually have my accent is because in the community I lived in, there were a lot of Americans. I was in the American school system. Most of my teachers were American. People were from all over the world, but it was very much like where I grew up almost felt and looked like an American suburb. If you can imagine like a suburb in Los Angeles or in Houston or whatever. Yeah. That's what it really looked like and felt like. And then when I was 11 years old, I went to boarding school. So I went to boarding school really early internationally. So I was still living in Saudi Arabia, but I was going to school in the UK. So from 11 to 17, I was at boarding school in the UK. I did really well in school, got into Oxford University, studied computer science there, graduated when I was 20. That's also where my music career started. So I released my first album when I was still in university. And then I did music full-time for 1 year. Moved to London, worked in the corporate world for 3 years as a management consultant. And then in late 2011, I took the big plunge and went full-time with my music. So since 2011, I've been on this independent journey. Ever since then, it all just started with music. For the first 8 years, anyone who'd heard of me from any time prior to 2019 would have just known me as a rapper because I wasn't doing all the additional things that I'm doing now. And then in 2019, I started my podcast, Real Talk with Zuby, wrote and released my first book, Strong and Vice, Zuby's Guide to Fitness for Everybody. Started to grow very aggressively on social media, especially Twitter. Had my first appearances on some real big podcasts, The Joe Rogan Experience, The Rubin Report, The Ben Shapiro Show, Candace Owens Show, appearances on BBC, Sky News, Fox News, all these things. It's also when 2019 is when like the USA discovered me. Prior to that time, my biggest audience was always in the UK. Now my biggest audience globally is in the USA.
Wow.
So there have been a lot of interesting changes over the last 4 years. And now I'm at a stage where different people know me for different things. There's people who still know me primarily as a rapper. There's people who know me as a podcaster. There's people who know me as a speaker. People who know me as a social media influencer or a Twitter troublemaker or whatever it is. Some people see me as a political figure. I don't know. I just do what I do. The through line between everything is really about it positively inspiring and motivating other people. That's what I'm all about. And if there's one word that actually really sums up what I do, it would be communicator. That's really what I do. If you think of the through line between music, podcasting, public speaking, coaching, social media, writing books, it's all communication.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's all using words to put out a message out there. I do my best to uplift people, but not in a kind of like rah, everything is
spiritual.
Not in that way, and having it very rooted and based in reality. So as you know, I have no problem talking about the ills of the world, or the problems that I'm seeing in the USA or in the West in general, or in this country or in that country. And I'm always traveling around all of them. So I'm talking to thousands of people in real life, millions of people online, and I just maintain a pulse of where society and culture are going, and I comment on that. And it turns out that millions of people around the world are interested in hearing what I have to say on all these different topics. So all I do is just share the thoughts that I'm already thinking. Like, people are like, Zuby, what's your Twitter strategy? It's like, I don't have a strategy. I say what I'm thinking. That's it. Like, I don't schedule anything. I don't use any software, whatever. I have a thought that crosses my mind, and I think it's interesting, or it's got some type of insight, or it's even funny. I'm like, cool, let me just share that with people. And that's how I've grown my audience so significantly.
Wow. So back to the US, and the US has become your largest following, and you've been kind of observing and visiting. Obviously, you've been to the US quite a bit, but what do you feel like we're up against? It does feel like there's multiple inflection points that the US is sort of experiencing. Maybe on social, maybe on technology, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think the USA is an incredibly amazing, impressive, and unique country. There's no country in the world that compares to the USA in many ways. I think that it's also a country which is experiencing a strange form of socio-cultural and political harakiri, suicide. Right? The greatest threat to the USA is not China, it's not Russia, it's not the WEF, it's not whatever. It's within. It's domestic. And that's what's so weird and disheartening about it, right? It's like this country is disemboweling itself, largely, I believe, because of a lack of perspective and gratitude, right? If you don't understand that something is special, and you don't have gratitude for it, and you're not, just thankful, and then you undermine it. You undermine it, and that undermining can lead to self-destructive behavior, right? So that's the thing that I really notice with the USA. That's what's so disheartening about it. It would kind of be easier if it's, I don't know, people who are in Ukraine can be like, oh, like we're being invaded. Right? Like there's an aggressor, there's a foreign nation, an army that's coming in.
Very clear, you can point,
Yeah, but with the US, like no one's invading the USA.
Yeah.
Right? It's psychological. It's generational. It's indoctrination. It's in schools, it's in universities, it's in the political system. It's people are being set against each other, right? On every line that you can fracture a society, there is a culture war in the USA. There's a gender war. There's a fake racial war. There's a sexuality war. There's an ethnicity war. There's a rich versus poor war. There's a left versus right war. There's a religious versus non-religious war. Even within religion, even amongst religion, it's just every way you can play identity politics, the USA is playing it. And this is not new, right? It's somewhat identity politics has been in the US for a long time, especially racial identity politics. But I feel like, and I comment on this often, I often say that humanity peaked in like the 1990s, 2000s, right? Like there was a point that was reached where it was like, oh, actually, cool. We've gotten past all of that historical nonsense and brutality and discrimination and unfair. Like, cool, we've created a society and a set of laws and everything where actually, yes, everyone does have equal human rights, right? Whether you're a man, you're a woman, you're black, you're white, you're straight, you're gay, whatever.
Yeah.
We're not going to mistreat you. No, same laws, same rules apply to everybody. And then it was like within the past 10, 15 years, it was decided that no, this is not enough. And we need to go, in the name of progress, we need to go backwards and we need to start playing these games again. You see what I mean? It's like, it's so for example, take something like race relations. And this is even looked at, you can look at various polls that have happened, right? In 2023, people, or certainly in 2022, the perception of race relations is worse now than it was, say, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, right? If you went and polled people in 2005, you poll black people, you poll white people, you poll Asian people, whatever. You say, what are your thoughts on race relations in the UK? How racist is the country? Like whatever way you phrase it. The answers would have been, the numbers would have been lower of people saying, oh, racism is a big problem or that racial tensions are high or whatever than now. And a lot of that is artificial, right? Because the USA it's not a more racist place than it was 20 or 30 or whatever years ago. But the perception is. And it's weird because there's this weird gap between online and reality. Online and the media and reality. So if you actually walk around New York City or Chicago or Austin or Nashville or whatever, it's like everyone's getting on, right? You travel, you're not seeing this chaos and people having fights in the street over this and that. Democrats and Republicans are out in the street fighting, and these people, it's like everyone's getting on pretty well. Like, okay, you know what I mean? But then you go on Twitter or whatever, and you're like, whoa, like this is crazy. What's going on here? There's this and there's this, and some of it is information overload. Some of it is intentional media bias. Some of it is the fact that human beings we're naturally more wired to and sensitive to negativity than positivity. So if you get, if you post this video on YouTube and 100 people leave a positive comment and one person leaves a nasty one,
you remember that one.
You remember the nasty one. Right? If there's a billion interactions which go on, which is no problem, and then there's one where something goes wrong or it gets violent or whatever, that's the one that goes viral. That's the one that makes the news, right? By definition, normal day life does not make the news. Right? So if you see a story, whether it's online or it's coming through traditional media, by definition, it's an anomaly, right? It's not normal. It's not every day. People are like, this is happening every day. This is this. People are there. This is a genocide. This is like, no one's being genocided in the U.S. Like, stop. Like, what are you talking? Like, what bizarre world are you living in where you believe that there is a group in the USA that's facing a genocide? Like I'm like, stop. But this is the rhetoric that people are using, even politicians, even people, this. And I've heard people say that, and I've heard it claimed every direction. I've heard that there's a genocide on men. I've heard that there's a genocide on women. I've heard there's a genocide on straight people. I've heard there's a genocide on LGBTQ people. I've heard there's a genocide on black people. I've heard there's a genocide on white people. Right? I'm like, how is every demographic is somehow
genocide?
And to use that level of language and rhetoric. I'm like, I don't even think people should play with that type of language because it's like, that's
reserved. That's reserved.
That's a real thing that has happened in history in various places and various times where there is a group, there's an ethnicity, there's a racial group, there's whatever people are trying to exterminate, like completely get rid of.
It almost lessens the experience of those people who actually went through it.
It cheapens it, right? It's the same. It's part of the problem with how. Obviously I'm critical of the basket of ideas people tend to call woke ideology. And part of it is because they also, they dilute terms. I call it label inflation, right? So we all know what financial inflation is. But there's also label inflation, right? So if you call everything racist and everyone racist, you dilute the meaning of the word. And you do this for years and years and years until it gets to the point where like someone says now if I hear one of these weirdos online saying that like, you know, so-and-so is racist, I'm kind of like, does that, like, it normally means they just said something inconvenient, or they said something they disagree with, and then it didn't get enough. Now they call people white supremacists.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, that person's, they'll even call black people white supremacists. They'll call Jewish people Nazis. They'll call, and I'm just like, stop. Like this, because then if someone who actually holds that ideology is now coming around the corner, or is now, you know, trying to rise to power, or is starting a genuine hate group, or what do you call them now? You called everyone else a white supremacist.
Yeah.
If the KKK really starts getting back together and is like recruiting and is like actually going around trying to, you know, do terrorist activities against black people or whatever, like, what? We don't have a name now for that. Wait, is that, like, if I'm far right? What's that?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? If you're calling me far right, then what's that? Ultra, extreme, uber, super far right?
They'll come up with something. They'll come. I mean,
you know what I mean? So people need to be very careful not to dilute the terminology, and I think people do it because, you know, obviously it scores quick political points. It's a lazy argument. But, you know, I just think people need to be a little more, I think something that ties this all together is just, you know, people just need to be more emotionally mature and just act like adults rather than just children.
But those dopamine hits, it's created an addiction of people wanting to get that cheap win at the expense of somebody else.
Yes.
So, I mean, I feel like that's not going to go away anytime soon. But the other thing that I thought was really interesting about you talking about like the 90s and 2000s and how that was sort of, we had progressed. People, I remember that era, and I was like, that was a great era. It was a great era. Great era. It was a wonderful time. And everyone was hopeful, and there was, at least in the United States, that was my experience. Do you think that times have almost gotten too good? And there's that quote that, you know, good times make weak men. Let's just put weak people on it, you know? Do you think that is why mixed coupled with a phone in your hand where you can just rip a tweet whenever and say something crazy, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not, you can just say, he's a racist, blah, 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 send, and then that's my day, or do you think it's a generational thing?
I think it's all the above. It's definitely a factor. You know, I think about this a lot, and I think one of the conclusions that's become obvious to me is that I think both individually and collectively, something that's clear to me is that the optimum level of struggle or hardship is not zero. Right? A lot of people might think that, oh, what would a perfect world look like? Or what would a perfect life look like? Or what would the happiest person, you know, and someone might think, you know, a life that's absent of any pain or sickness or death or tragedy or, you know, accidents or anything like that. But that's not true. That's not actually true. And something that's interesting is it's clear that in the absence of genuine adversity or problems, people actually manufacture or imagine their own. Right? So if there isn't a real, genuine struggle or problem, right? Like people make up their own. You see this even with...
The brain, I guess, just does it, right? For you.
Yeah. I have a theory on this, and I have no idea if this is, you know, if there's been any peer-reviewed studies on this. Okay. I have a theory that each human being, we all have a baseline. Look, we're designed to survive. Every animal, primary instinct is self-preservation, survival. Right? Most animals, most humans, whatever, there's always a natural threat. There's predators, there's weather, there's natural disasters, there's droughts, there's pestilence, disease, all sorts of things, right? There's wars, there's violence, all through human history. It's really the story of people in all these different countries where they're like surviving. Surviving. We got to fight this, we got to fight that, we got to fight that, we got to stay alive. And so it's only in the past under a century where even in Western countries where people are generally like comfortable, right? There are very few people in the USA who are on the brink of starvation. Right. In fact, it's the opposite problem. People are eating themselves to death. There's so much food and so much abundance. People are more likely to eat themselves to death than starve to death. That's a historically, that's never happened before. Right?
Wow.
Right. Think about it.
I'm just like, damn.
Think about it. Right. Like,
no, it's true. Yeah.
No time in history were people eating themselves to, like, there's so much food. We have so much that we're now making ourselves physically sick.
Yeah.
We have so much information and so much tech, and we're making ourselves mentally ill. Right? It's problems of surplus. If you look at developing countries, the main problems are problems of lack. Right? There isn't enough. There is not enough clean water. There is not enough electricity to go around. There's not enough food to go around. There literally isn't enough. But then in the West, we've got the opposite problem. We have so much abundance that we're now. This is why even in in like richer and more developing places, I believe there's much greater incident of mental health problems. Right? So coming back to my theory is I believe that because we're wired for survival, I think that every person has like a baseline level of, you could call it anxiety or nervous energy, right? Because we're in survival mode, right? So there's some level of, let's call it anxiety. There's like a baseline level of it, which I think continuously sort of rises unless it's dissipated. So you can dissipate it in very positive ways. Go to the gym, exercise, go for a run, build something with your hands, do something creative, write a book, create a podcast, have a great conversation. There's positive, healthy ways that you can get rid of that energy. Exercise being the most obvious. And anyone who, whether you're a runner, you're a lifter, you're a power lifter, you're a CrossFitter, whatever you do, everyone knows that actually after you do that, you feel good, you feel less stressed, you feel more peaceful. And people are more sedentary than ever. Right? So for most people, most men are not out hunting and building and fishing and fighting and doing all this stuff, right? Yep. Like our ancestors were. They're sitting at a desk and they're on a laptop, right? Like we can make our living probably without like leaving a room if we wanted to. Yeah. Right? Again, unprecedented. This has never been the case before. So if you don't expel that anxiety, if you don't get rid of that energy, in a positive way, number one, it builds up inside you, which is why I think we're having all-time highs of people saying, I have anxiety, I'm depressed, I have mental health issues, I have whatever. And it's not, you'll also notice that people like that don't tend to be expelling the energy in a good way, but you'll get rid of it somehow. So I think that when you go on Twitter and you're seeing people attacking each other, attacking strangers, going crazy on this, spiking on this, I'm like, this is a very unhealthy manifestation of getting rid of that energy. You're doing it in a self-destructive way, in a destructive way. You're attacking, instead of being like, okay, let me, and I feel this in myself personally. So if I don't go to the gym, right? Like I've been training for 20 years, like I'm normally, if something causes me to not be able to train, right? When they had the hard third lockdown in the UK and they shut down all the gyms for months. That was the first time in my life since I was 15 that I went more than a month without going to the gym. I was still exercising. I was still doing push-ups. I was still doing what I could. In your
room or?
Yeah. I was still doing what I could. So I was still exercising. Okay. Most people weren't. I was still exercising, but like I was way more aggressive. I was way more like, I'm a very calm, very, very calm person. Yeah. Right. And people should, thank the gym for that because I'm calm because I go to the gym, like I'm constantly getting rid of, I'm active, I'm moving, I'm creating, I'm building, I'm writing, I'm exercising. So I'm constantly getting rid of that energy. More of it comes back every day, get rid of it. And I try my best to do it in constructive ways. But if you just sit there and you're sedentary and you're not doing that, it's still there, it's still building. It's like, okay, let me go on Twitter. I'm gonna get someone. Like, let me go flame someone. Let me go sit there for 3 hours and scream at people, scream into the abyss, whatever. And it's cathartic, right? You'll even get people who say, it makes me like, and it's like, well, you're getting rid of that energy, but you're not doing it in a constructive way. And as we know, energy cannot be created nor destroyed, right? It just changes and transmutes. So I think that that's a lot of the problem that we're having. And so it's linked to sedentaryism because people are literally not physically moving their bodies. And so many people are not engaging in positive habits and hobbies and activities that help to expend that. So some biologist can go and see how much validity there is to that theory. But I think that's there's something to that.
I did see something, and I did see it on TikTok. So just more, but it was interesting. There was a guy on there who allegedly has a background in studying these types of things, and said basically, he said, "Do you ever wonder why, you look back at some of like older pictures of people and they almost look older at 18?" And he's like, "Well, there's a reason for that. It's because when you struggle, you actually produce stress hormones that makes you develop further into an adult sort of body." So equivalent to that would be how we've domesticated dogs, right? Dogs don't, their meal's right there. They get to eat, they're not out there surviving, hunting for their food. And then as a result, you get a softer animal.
Yeah.
Well,
and they're developing, and dogs are developing allergies and stuff like that, right? You've now got gluten intolerant dogs. I'm like, bro, like, this is devolution. Like, what do you mean your dog is gluten intolerant?
Meds, and I'm not even on any. I take no medications. Like you believe fitness is the option for me. That obviously, I'm not saying that's a subscription or a prescription, sorry, for everybody. But anyways, but dogs and people and everything has gotten a lot softer, and that's sort of been a recent phenomenon with maybe the past 20 years or 30 years. And it's just, I think I personally feel it with men that I interact with. Okay. And I know you talk a little bit about, masculinity, and it's interesting too, just taking, asserting themselves in a situation or taking control. Half the time it's like on me. I'm like, something will happen. For example, like something unexpected happens and there needs to be a plan in a few minutes, and they can't come up with it. It's insane. They don't have, it's like that muscle never gets used. And I'm like, well, I guess I got to save the day for the both of us. Like, what's going on here? It's just like and I think that's really tough. I think you put out a tweet the other day, if I'm not mistaken, about we're kind of just, there's like this single, maybe this wasn't you, or maybe I was just thinking about familyless, kind of lost group of people who aren't getting married, who are kind of just out there looking for identity, looking for purpose. And I wonder if you could just kind of expand on that.
Yeah, man, all these ideas these are whole books right here.
Speaking of, is that what's going to be in the book? What's the book?
Yeah, it's going to cover a lot of the stuff I tweet about. It's going to be a massive expansion of it.
Okay.
So it's going to cover a lot of different topics. But let's talk about like the masculinity and the male-female dynamic, gender dynamics. So something that is happening, and I think something that's causing a lot of, something very obvious, like, is that there's a lot of identity crisis going on. Like millions of young people are literally confused about what gender they are. Even if they know their gender, what is their role, what's their purpose, right? And I think that there have been multiple factors in this, from the breakdown of family to the loss of traditional religion to changes in technology to, like, there's so many factors at play here. But I think that a big issue that's happened with younger people, let's say mid to younger millennials and
Gen Z
and below that, is boys and girls and young men and women are being bombarded, not just with a lot of information, but a lot of very mixed messaging, right? So if you're a young man or a boy, you are simultaneously being told that you need to man up, but also masculinity is toxic, but also we need masculinity, but also masculinity doesn't really exist, but also gender is a social construct, but also women are strong and independent and don't need no man, but also women are not strong and independent and need a man.
Yeah.
And all, like before, if you were a man or you were a woman, so people can say
before, if you were a man.
Right, like in the past. Look, if
before you had genders.
Look, in the past, if you were a male or a female growing up in society, for most of human history, and still in most of the world, there's not much confusion or question about what your role in society is, right? For thousands of years of human history, okay, you're a boy, you're going to grow up to be a man. Your role is to be a protector, be a provider, be a patriarch, be the priest of your family, and you're a warrior. Your role is here, right? So whether this can manifest in a lot of different ways. You might literally be a warrior who's going out into battle, or you might be a doctor who's this. You might be a farmer or whatever it is, right? If you're a woman, your primary role is in the home, right? Your number one role is raising children, that next generation, the social aspect, even handling a lot of the finances and the resources and things like that, the social dimension. That's your role, right? So, and I'm not saying that this is perfect, right?
No.
But this is how it was.
That's what it was.
That's what it was, right? So you weren't having, in the 1800s, even 19, there weren't boys growing up like, oh, what's my purpose as a man, right? And also, based on these simple dynamics, what you would do to even attract the partner of the other sex was obvious, right? Yeah. So, okay, I need to get a good job. I need to be mentally and physically strong. I need to do these things, and I will attract a woman, right? And a woman is looking for those things, and a man is looking for a woman who's going to be a good wife and good mother to his future children and has these feminine qualities. Very clear, very simple. Everyone couples up, monogamous relationships, boom, simple, clean. It works. Now, that still exists. All those dynamics, that biology still exists. Men are still attracted to the exact same things we've been attracted to since forever. Women are primarily still attracted to the same things they've been attracted to forever. However, due to all these political and social and technological and cultural changes, the messaging and the options have been so expanded that it's causing problems, right? Because women don't need men on an individual level. On a societal level, women absolutely need men, but on an individual level, like, you don't need a man to survive. No. Okay? If you were born 200 years ago, you did. Yeah. Right? Right? Like, so, yeah, it's just facts, right? Like, and there's an upside to that. But also, it means that a man is like, well, what do I even do? Yeah. Like, before, my dad or my granddad, he just needed to, like, have a shower every day, like, brush his teeth, be somewhat clean, have a decent job and an income, and he could pretty much be guaranteed a decent wife. Yeah. Right? And his grandma probably, she just needed to do, like, a few simple things, and she's almost guaranteed a good husband who's going to look after her, and, they'll raise the kids together. And now it's like, oh boy, like, what do we do? So I think both men and women are having this, especially younger ones, are having this kind of confusion about, like, well, like, what's my role? What do I do? Like, are we still supposed to be the providers? Like, women still are attracted to that and still say they want that, right? If you ask a young woman what quality she wants in men, a lot of them will talk about, ambition. A lot will say, oh, I'd like a man who even earns X amount of money, whatever. But then at the same time, 2 seconds later, they'll be saying, I earn my own money, I'm strong, I'm independent, I don't actually need a man, da-da-da. And so it's, like I said, it's just mixed messaging all the time. Yeah. And I know as a man, you're constantly getting hit with, men need to man up, where have all the good men gone? What happened to chivalry? This and this and this. And then 2 seconds later, it's like toxic masculinity and like this and this. And it's just like, what's going on? And then with women, they're being pushed, a lot of overt or covert feminism. Yeah. Right? You're not just equal to a man, but like almost the same as a man. And you should compete directly with men. And there's a gender pay gap, and we need to fight the patriarchy, and we need to do this. Like, it's all trying to, like, shove women into the man box. Yeah. Right? Men are being told, you need to be more in touch with your masculine side, but you also need to be more in touch with your feminine side. And women too, like, you need to do this, and you need to. And I just think that millions and millions of people, whether or not that they're able to articulate it in this way, they're growing up in that society and in that culture. It's in the media, it's in the movies, it's in the music, it's in everything. And it's just, I think it's just deranging.
Yeah.
I think it's just deranging. And then on top of it all, you run the sort of latest version of the gender madness program, which is that gender is just a social construct, and actually men and women are social constructs, and a man can be a woman, and a woman can be a man, and you can be neither, or you can make up your own gender, and anyone who questions that is a bigot, and this, and I just think, boy, a lot of people are just like, what do I do?
Where
I
do
think,
I go?
I think if you're a young man, if you're an 18-year-old man or woman right now, and you're just, growing up in America, or you're growing up in the UK or whatever, it's so mixed up. It's so mixed up, right? Just on one, again, and then even, it's like, it's amazing because it's on every level, right? It's like, even with both men and women, right? And then, you've got things even like, you've got hookup culture, you've got Tinder, you've got this. It's like, being promiscuous is empowering, right? You should sleep around with whoever you want, and you should just do whatever you want. Just do whatever makes you feel happy in that moment. Just do whatever you want. Anyone who judges you or criticizes, like, they're all bad or whatever, right? But then also you've still got there's this weird clash between, this flip-flopping between the sort of traditional and conservative and the uber liberal and progressive and just, do what thou willst, but also not really.
It's almost so crazy though, because it almost feels like we've come back around, and you can talk a little bit about this, but on the, at least, I'm gonna be real honest.
Yeah, do it.
For transgender people, just how I am with money, I'm like, if you want to go get a surgery and do what you want to do, go ahead. Mm-hmm. But you're not allowed to, you're not allowed to play sports. Yeah. And if you want to do that, I'm never going to tell, if the government's
you can play sports, just not men against women.
Yeah, you're not playing, you don't get everything, right? Yeah. It's almost men are owning women. It's so backwards, right? We were so men are, there was almost a 2016, if I had to pick a time period, where people were really rah girl boss, kind of, let's find equality, let's find parity. Okay, so a man competing in a female league, team, whatever, and then winning it, the thing, because let's be honest.
And being celebrated for it.
Yes, exactly. Honestly.
It's so goofy. This is what I mean. It's unbelievably goofy, and it's incredibly misogynistic.
That's what I'm saying. It's misogynistic.
It's so misogynistic.
I get it, but why they don't?
There's a lot they don't see, and I'm not even trying to be super partisan here.
Back around. Men are now owning women in women's sports.
Yes, it's been decided implicitly by our societies that men who feel like women or who want to cosplay as women that their feelings take priority over the feelings and needs of actual women, and in the process, you are completely undermining all of the actual gender equality of opportunity and fairness that you had fought for all these decades to achieve. And to answer why people don't see it, okay, here's another one of my thoughts. And this is why I think that, the quote unquote left, the progressive side of the left wing, has gone off the hinges in the last, especially over the past decade. I think it's because the more equal a society is in terms of laws and general fairness and social tolerance and all that genuine positive liberal qualities, the more the need for progressives or that wing of the left becomes. Right? Again, go back to other times in history. Even if you just look at the USA, there was always a group that you could make a clear-cut case, both legally and socially, was discriminated against. Right? Rewind 100 years ago to 1923. Okay? Where literally not everyone could vote. Yep. Right? If you are of this race, you cannot vote. If you are a woman, you cannot vote. If you are this, and the actual, so this is what people were being lynched there was real racial violence. There was segregation. Hey, you can't drink at this water fountain if you're black. Hey, we're in South Africa right now.
Apartheid ended 30 years ago.
1994, right? No, you can't be at this beach, right? This interaction, no, I can't be here in this room with you because we have different skin colors. And that's not that long ago. So on all these countries for all this time, like the progressives, the liberals had a genuine proper cause. Hey, no, we want equal rights for everybody. We want women to have equal rights for men. We want black people to have equal rights as white people. We don't want segregation. We don't want unfair discrimination. We don't want people being beaten up in the street because of their gender, because of their race, because of their sexuality, because of all these. So all this progress was made in literally under a century, right? Incredible progress, civil rights movements. People became genuinely so much more tolerant and kind and decent towards each other. But then once you achieve that, what do? So you still have all these people, millions of people who they're activist minded. They want to fight for change. They're looking for the oppressed class that they can lift up. They're looking for this end. I think they're just misfiring right now.
Yeah.
Right? It's like they haven't just looked up and gone, hey, actually we've made some great progress over the past century. Right? So even the people who are there, trans rights are human rights, trans rights. What do people even mean? What rights do trans people not have?
I'm a woman. I've lived my entire life, and I can't tell you anything that I was not able to do because of my gender.
Yeah.
There was nothing that anyone told me, and I'm nearly 30 years old. That's a bit of time, and I've never been told you can't do this.
Yeah, or a law that's just like, nope, women are not allowed in.
If anything, I make more than most of my male friends, which is,
because we've overcorrected.
We've overcorrected. I'm like, damn, I guess. Yeah, like who's paying for dinner? I feel bad, whatever. But you know what I mean? But it's become that, and I honestly feel equal to. This sounds weird because it's not correct, because I feel like I'm very feminine, but I feel like I've taken on because of that movement and because of that 2016 almost when I guess it was in the job market before that, but that's when it was happening, of being like, be a girl boss, equal pay. Equal pay, I'm doing great. Like, I have no complaints. I'm happy, but I feel like I've almost taken on these masculine qualities that I actually never wanted, which is my kind of realization now, but you can only see that now that narrative was discussed for so many years, and now you see the effects, right? So whatever's being discussed now, we're seeing the effects a bit more quickly with social media, but you almost see the effects a few years down the line and the effect it has on society.
Yes.
So now that we have everyone is equal, I think it's interesting that everyone's looking for equality and no one is fine with, hey, we just have differences. Men and women are just different.
Yeah.
You do this thing, it's still valuable.
It's a chapter in my book.
We're equal, is it?
Yeah.
We're equal. There's value, but people don't find, it makes me actually sad that people don't find value in the things that a woman is.
Yeah. Aubrey, you're nailing it. You're nailing it. There's so many things you said that are so interesting. And you know what? This is actually one of my greatest criticisms of modern so-called feminism, is because I believe what it does and what it's doing is it actually takes the masculine standards as the standard, right?
Explain that a little bit.
What I mean is that the goals of feminism are always aspiring towards masculinity.
Yeah.
It was almost like, we want women to be more like men. We want women to be able to do all these things that men do. We want women to do them and to be in those spaces. When people are complaining about the lack of female CEOs or the lack of women in this industry or in that industry or whatever, you're saying you want more men, you want women to go into these male-dominated fields and to compete and to have the same desires and wants and therefore outcomes that men do. Very few. There are probably 10 times more men who even want to be the CEO of a company than women. Just like there's 100 times more men who want to be plumbers, electricians, mechanics, construction workers. There's so many fields right? So the thing isn't, oh, we need genuine sort of fairness and equality of opportunity for women. It went past that. And now it's like we need to shove women into this masculine framing. It's this constant comparison between the genders on like a competitive level, right? Why should? So someone will come and say, and this is also where people start framing every disparity as a problem, right? So obviously the so-called gender pay gap, that's been debunked forever.
Yeah.
But even the framing of it as a problem, if you take all this male salaries and all the female salaries, whatever, and men's earn, I don't know, 30% more.
Yeah.
I'm like, so what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Why is that inherently a problem? If this field is 90% male and 10% female, why is that inherently a problem? So people are trying to fix problems that don't exist. And anyone who fundamentally understands that men and women are different and have different proclivities and have different interests and have different aspirations. And what's really funny about it is you can inverse all of these things, right? So all these narratives that are used to make it that, women are, the victims and that they're oppressed by men, or there's male privilege and this and that. You can invert all of them to sell the case that it's men who are oppressed and men who are victimized, right? So who spends more time at work? Men. Who make up 90% plus of workplace deaths? Men. Who are way more likely to commit suicide? Men. Who are more likely to be homeless? Men. Who live on average 3 to 5 years less, right? Can you imagine if women died 5 years earlier than men on average? Do you know we'd never hear the end of the gender life expectancy gap? No one gives a crap that men die 5 years earlier than women. Like it's not even. It's not, no. If it were the other way around, if women were dying earlier than men, we would never hear the end of it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, people think you hear a lot about gender pay gap. And so this is the thing. And by the way, there's many reasons why men die more early than women. Like, just go on YouTube and watch any video of someone doing something stupid and dangerous. Guarantee you it's a man, right? And also testosterone has effects which can harm people. But it's just this very lopsided thing. Here's another thing that's interesting. You probably know this. Who controls majority of consumer spending? Who spends more money? Women spend more money than men.
Yeah.
So men earn more money and women spend more.
Yeah.
Who has the power there? Right? If you're going to play that game, would you rather be earning more money? Would you rather spend the money? Right? You see what I mean? But they never turn the narrative that way because it all has to sort of maintain this very specific structure of the identity politics and the grievance narratives and so on. And the truth is, ultimately, look, men and women are not meant to directly be in competition on everything.
Yeah.
We are designed. We exist to be complementary. Right? The strengths that men on average have are often things that women lack or are not as strong at. The things that women are incredibly good at, and generally, we all know there are things that men are generally better at than women.
Yeah.
There are things women are generally better at than men. It's supposed to be like that because we have two sexes, trigger some people, and we're designed to be complementary. Both exist, a 50-50 split within the population. That's not an accident.
Yeah.
And so when you put them together, you get a whole.
Yeah.
Right? When you have a man, you have a woman, you have a husband, you have a wife, you have a father, you have a mother. They play different roles, but together they're stronger than they would be alone. And so people have been like brainwashed. So many men have been brainwashed to think you have to compete with women and women are the enemy. Women have been brainwashed to think you have to compete with men. Men are the enemy. Men are out to get them. The patriarchy is meeting every Tuesday at 3 to like find out how to put the boot down on those broads. And it's just nuts to me. I'm just like, why is there so much tension and hostility? And I know part of the answer. And some of that is also from previous generations, right? Sadly, especially in the USA, sadly, millions and millions of people have grown up seeing dysfunction and seeing their parents or their friends' parents or other people they know have bad relationships, or the father, if someone, I'm not going to knock any woman who grew up in a situation where, their father left, or the dad was absent, or the dad was of course she's going to be drawn to the idea of not relying on a man and being strong and being independent and having her own, because she saw, well, my mom tried to rely on a man and look what happened. Right? So I can totally logically get where these ideas come. And when you multiply that by millions of people with those experiences, then you end up in this situation where women are more distrustful of men, men are more distrustful of women, and you get this sort of cycle that can kind of go around in a community where it just becomes this weird, battle of the sexes rather than being like, hey, we're different. Cool. Not only is that okay, that is good.
Yeah.
If women were the same as men, we wouldn't be attracted to them.
Yeah. well,
right?
Some people would.
I don't know your taste exactly, Aubrey, but I imagine that like your ideal man is not someone who is just like your female friends, right? I imagine you'd rather. I think you'd probably be quite repulsed by a man who literally behaves exactly like a woman.
Yes.
Right? You'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just how it is. It's not a problem. It's literally how we got this far. Like our species would have ceased to exist a long time ago if there wasn't this healthy polarity.
Yeah. I think some interesting things you said. There's so many things. One, I think it's interesting being in a space that is financial tech, right? You have two industries that are dominated by men naturally. And every time I get asked, they always throw this question when I do interviews. They're like, how do we get more women into fintech, Bitcoin, crypto, whatever? And I'm like, people will come if they're interested. Yeah. It's not about how do we get more people in my opinion. Yeah. I would hope that everyone likes money, right? You want to invest. I think people will naturally come at if they are interested. I don't feel this need to herd people in by the masses. When it resonates with them on a human level, and that takes a little bit different approach for women than it does for men. Men sometimes just like a technical approach, and they're like, this is great. Yeah. I get it, understand it. Some women are like that too. But some women need a more tangible spending, maybe, maybe it's more retailers are offered. They come in a different wave. But it's not the same approach. It's not a cookie cutter approach for every single person. And I just hate that question, number one, every time I'm on these things. Because it's like, we're just different. We're just different. And I've always been okay with that. Yeah. It's never made me feel like I was inferior or something. Yeah. And then the other thing that I think is interesting there, we do have to acknowledge, I think on some level, that, a woman's greatest threat sometimes can be their significant other. If we're talking about domestic abuse. And that's never going to be fair or equal. Men are built bigger than women. Yeah. And men can be an actual physical threat to women, and like you mentioned, people.
It's always been the case,
and it's always going to be a threat. They have the strength to do that, and I don't think that ever leaves anyone in a comfortable feeling. Like there's no resolution to that at the end of the day. Men aren't going, hopefully, not to get smaller. Yes. And thankfully, women can now make enough money. Before they couldn't have their own bank account. They couldn't, they needed to get it in their husband's name. Now they can do that. They can leave. I know there's obviously other variables. I'm never going to judge anyone's situation of leaving a situation of domestic abuse, but I just wanted to call that one out. Just so that we're having a fair conversation.
Absolutely. And this is where virtue is important.
Yeah.
Right. And that's such a deep. This leads down another whole deep rabbit hole. But what is the bulwark against violent, psychopathic, aggressive criminal men? It is strong, virtuous, kind, caring, compassionate men. Right? Those are the only people who can stop them. Right? It can't be like weak men who they can run roughshod. Like you need. So I think something that's you touch on such an interesting, man. You hit so many interesting points. Like there's so many directions. There's so many directions it can go for. So, okay, here's a point, and I'm not going to make this as eloquently as someone like I guess Jordan Peterson could, but male strength is. I've said before that I believe men are always building or destroying. Okay. Men are always building or destroying. if you look around the room, if you look around the city, if you look around the world, almost everything you see that like physically exists was made by men.
Yeah.
Right? Buildings, skyscrapers, boats, cars, appliances, electronics, most of it is made by men. Civilizations, cities, all of it. Also, if you look in history or you just look around the world and you look at destruction, destructive behavior, raising of villages, murder, rape,
Most mass
assault,
shootings.
war, shootings, whatever it is, 90% plus men, right? So men are always building or destroying. If a man is not involved in a positive, constructive activity or activities, guaranteed he's going to be destroying something. He's going to be destroying another man's project. He's going to be attacking people in real life or online. He's going to be destroying himself. He's going to be poisoning himself with alcohol or with substances. He might even go to the point of trying to terminate his own life if things get really, really bad, right? So men, it's so important that men are involved in something positive and creative, because we do have testosterone, right? I have probably 20 times plus the amount of testosterone that you do, like coursing through all my veins, right? And I have to, again, channel that towards things that are positive and virtuous and good, because that same energy can be taken and used for destruction. That's gang activity, that's terrorism, that's criminal, that's all of that stuff. That's like, you know, I hate the term toxic masculinity, but if that term is going to be used, that's what it is. It's a negative and destructive manifestation of that testosterone and male energy and aggression and muscle and capacity for violence. Every man, I have great capacity for violence, incredible capacity for destruction, right? Like I'm physically strong, I'm big, I'm in good health. Like I have the physical power to like break stuff. Yeah. Right? And so what makes a man actually healthy and moral and virtuous is you have that power, but it's under control. Right? I think Jordan Peterson said something like, you know, you're a monster, but it's under control. Right? You know, a virtuous man isn't a man who's just weak and has no capacity to do anything. It's like, no, you have the capacity to do a lot of things. You have that power, you know, with your mind, with your words, with your physical capabilities, but it's under control and it's being used towards something positive, something good. Towards protection, towards provision, towards teaching, all of those type of things. So I think that's where that comes into play. And I think that both society and some individuals, both men and women alike, they're based on their own personal experiences, or perhaps their own lack of calibration, they may struggle to differentiate between, let's say, male competence and male threat. Do you see what I mean? So I think one reason why so many, you know, why there's this crisis of masculinity is because men have this destructive potential, any form of male strength or competence is conflated with that aggression or violence or destruction or something. So when someone sees like a big, strong man, you know, say a man who's like physically strong, right? There can be this negative connotation that he's somehow, you know, he's violent, or he's a thug, or he's this, and he's that, because you can see the potential for power, right? When you see a strong man, like you realize, whoa, like that guy could hurt someone, right? And some people can't then differentiate. It's like, okay, so therefore he's a threat because there's that potential. And I think perhaps I'm psychoanalyzing some people here, but perhaps there are people who they just see that. So any form of male competence they see as a threat. You see what I mean? So they're almost like trying to neuter men to eliminate this threat, not realizing that actually if you make men weak, what was that saying you brought up earlier, right? Weak men create bad times. And I would argue actually that weak men are a much greater threat to a society than strong men. Right? Because men who are weak, that can manifest in far more destructive ways. Like you're much better having men who are strong and competent, but virtuous. Right? So like that's actually the type of man a woman wants. A woman generally would want a guy he's masculine and he's frame, he's solid, you can rely on him, he's physically strong, he'll protect you. But he's not going to, right? So where's that line between someone being able to determine, okay, there's that, but is he virtuous? Because if not, if a guy is that competent and that strong and capable,
But he's not.
But he's not virtuous.
Yeah.
Like that's
the problem.
Right? That's trouble. That's real trouble. And in fact, the more competent he is and the stronger he is,
the more
if he's not virtuous, then whoa, like that's very, very destructive.
Yeah.
And so I think some people can't see the difference, so they just try to neuter.
That's deep. That's deep. That's super interesting. There's so many interesting things. I feel like I could go off 3 different routes.
You can.
Well, one thing I did like that you said was, I grew up Catholic, so we talked about this quite a bit. People like to say, or society likes to say, like everyone's an animal, which we are, but we have discernment. We can make decisions. We have that. No one likes to hear that. Because they want to be like, well, I just. These are the impulses I have, and I have to just go off that. I'm hungry, so I eat. I feel horny, so I have sex. I do this because I feel this. And it's like, no, you could actually just be like, I feel like fasting, or I feel like abstinent. But like, that never sells. That's boring. It's not what people are interested in doing.
It's also we live in, we're both capitalists. We like capitalism, but capitalism does have potential downsides when it's unrestrained, right? Because if things are profit driven, there's a word you said there, fasting, right? There's nothing less profitable than fasting. It doesn't matter what the fast is, right? The last thing that the food industry and big pharma and like all these, the last thing they want is people not eating, right? Yeah. Like that's the worst, right? They want everything's driven on consumerism, right? If people like tighten their spending and are really careful with their budget and they're not blowing stuff on credit cards and going to debt or whatever, and they're like, I'm going to be very sensible with my spending. That's not good for the system. That's not good for the shops. That's not good for the retailers. That's not good for the people trying to sell you a car that you can't really afford or a house that you can't really afford, whatever. It's not good if people tighten their belts in that way.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of the problem is that the incentive structure is just kind of broken.
Totally
There's so much stuff that you can view. Just the truth is, all human behavior, most human behavior, is just driven off incentives.
Yeah.
Right. So if you create the right incentives and you incentivize good and positive things, you tend to get more of it. If you disincentivize that, you get less. Or if you incentivize bad behavior, you get more bad behavior. Right. And this is something that's a problem across politics, across social, across culture, across business, whatever it is. If there is a perverse incentive, right? Look in the crypto world, look in the finance world, right? If there is an easy way to make money that you might be able to get away with at least for some time, and you could make like millions or even billions, and that incentive is there, and maybe there's a chance you get covered. Like some people are gonna do it, right? Because there's that incentive there, and the incentive is massive. If you have a situation where you have certain, say, welfare programs which are not done well, and it becomes you can have these weird situations where someone is literally better off financially not working than they are working.
Yeah.
A rational person will choose to not work. Like, if I'm going to be punished for working, why would I work?
Yeah.
Right? If I'm going to be punished for doing this thing, why would I do it? And I think we have a lot of broken incentives right now. So people are kind of being incentivized and influenced in bad ways that we don't necessarily notice.
Yeah, I just don't think people have morals anymore, really. But I go back and forth on that because I was debating my friend the other day, and I was saying it's sort of the same, different people, different, mediums perhaps, but the same issues, greed, all these things kind of come back in a different way, or, violence, and it just reinvents itself. At least I'm talking about the crypto space, the greed. Is it different than like Judas betraying Jesus for a bag of money back in the day? It's the same thing. We've been doing this forever. It's just different people learning the lessons, honestly. But one thing I did want to talk about, kind of moving into AI now, is you said a little bit about like, if men don't have anything to do, and let's just talk about people generally having nothing to do, then that can be dangerous. People need purpose, they need identity. And so I was talking actually with a different friend the other day and was saying, I don't want this to happen. I predict that when people get laid off, there will be an uptick in violence, because a lot of times when people are lost, and this is not this is like statistically proven that when people don't have work, violence increases. And we got in kind of an argument about that. He's like, well, AI is great. It's like, you're not embracing it. I was like, I'm just saying facts here. Like, I think there'll be a violence uptick if people don't have a job.
Yes.
And I think potentially with AI, we could get a world where the US is just like how Norway is, they're just paying people to live. And I don't know if that's going to happen here. I would love to hear your thoughts on AI, what you think is coming. Boy. If you think it's, a threat. I saw you tweet out the Jay-Z thing, which was wild. Jay's basically like an AI version of a Jay-Z song, and you were like, this sounds like Jay-Z.
Yeah, exactly.
So...
yeah, I think AI is I'm extraordinarily skeptical about it. I don't think it's going to be a net positive. And I'm one of the most optimistic people out there.
Yeah.
I struggle to see how this is going to be a net positive for humanity. And, I think a problem we're having now, again, which is accelerating, is, just because something this is true on so many levels. Like, we're seeing this with so many things happening, is just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, right? On an individual level and on a societal level, on a technological level, just because you can create, in theory, a technology that does something, we need to sometimes take a step back and think, why are we doing this? How does this benefit humanity? Because humanity should rule over technology. Technology should exist to better humanity. Technology shouldn't be a false idol or a false god, which then rules over humanity. Do you see what I mean? And I think we're potentially reaching this inflection point. People are so keen to just pursue every type of science and technology so aggressively and do all these things. Like the other day I was hearing, I don't know if you've heard about this, they're toying with the idea and, putting out there seriously, looking into doing like womb transplants.
Oh my God.
Right? So that a man can potentially give birth, right? Again, firstly, what problem are you trying to solve? Right? Since when is it a problem?
It's so selfish, though. It's not even about the baby. It's about the person wanting to carry it. What about the health of the child?
Yeah, I mean, if it's even possible. Like, maybe it won't. I imagine there's going to be a lot of brutality and horror in even attempting to do this. But it's like, why? Right? Just because, say you can, but it's like, should you? Should you? Right? If you can make an AI that renders all human jobs and labor and work and careers obsolete. If you could create that, should you? Like, why? Right? Why would you? And some people are like, oh, well, it's going to happen anyway. It's going to happen. It's only going to happen anyway because everyone's saying it's going to happen anyway. You kind of see what I mean? I'm like, we are not necessarily us, but us as human beings, we are the arbiters of technology.
Yeah.
Right? If a technology does not serve us and is a net negative, why create it and implement it and put it out there everywhere? Do you see? You kind of see what I mean? So this is why, when it comes to AI and particularly, to me, it's very different to previous technologies. Most previous technologies, it was like, okay, well, people are spending a lot of time, sweeping floors so let's invent a vacuum cleaner. Let's invent a labor-saving devices. Right? Let's make it faster to get from point A to point B, right? Let's have a car instead of a horse and carriage. Let's have airplanes. Let's have all this. But with this one, it's like, well, some degree of AI obviously is potentially useful and helpful, right? Assisting people with their jobs, right? If you can have you're doing a surgery and you can have some type of thing that makes the surgery safer using a type of AI, or even, running a search online or something like that. But when it gets to the point of just like replacing, like literally replacing human beings, replacing jobs, right? Instead of taxi drivers and truckers and all that, it's all just self-driving vehicles, right? Instead of having any cashiers or bank tellers or people working in stores or whatever, it's just all AI. You just walk in and you take, you're a doctor, you're a rapper, you're an author, you're whatever. We don't need no more authors, right? Every book is just written by ChatGPT point 20. Like, and humans just become obsolete. I'm like, that's awful, because people often forget that. And there are people, who are advocates of, say, something like universal basic income, and they say, oh, let's just, everyone can just have UBI and whatever, kumbaya. And the purpose of work is not just to make money. I think this is where people get so lost in sort of materialism and consumerism that they forget the purpose of work is not just money, right? That's where it's something that gives you purpose. It gives you meaning. It lets you know that you're a valued member of community. Like everything, whatever job you do, whatever job or career you have, even if you don't love it, it's like you are providing, by definition, some type of valuable service or product to your fellow human beings, right? You're a valued member of society. The whole economy, everyone working, trading, exchanging our time, exchanging our money, that whole ecosystem, which has existed forever, it gives people meaning, purpose, direction, a reason to wake up in the morning. If someone just paid you however much money you earn, if you could just sit at home and you just got paid that amount, right? So your earnings are the same, but you're not doing the labor, you're not doing the work, you're not doing anything to do it. Like that's a problem, right? Firstly, the money's not tied to anything, so even people's concept of money and value and everything deteriorates. But it's like, well, everyone's just useless. And some people say, oh, well, people will create art and people will spend more time. It's like, no, they won't. In fact, we had an experiment. We literally, right? We had an experiment. This was tested out. If you give people tons of free time and you let all those millions of people who before were working jobs and now they're just sitting at home, whatever, like, how much art came out of it? Like, how many people wrote books? How many people actually started a podcast? People didn't do anything. The people who were already creative and active, like, created more and were more. But the people who weren't didn't. People just lazed around and got fatter and ate trash. Even domestic violence went up. Yeah. Right? Like, all these mental health problems went up. Overdoses went up. All of these things. So, like I said, if that energy is not being expended, it turns destructive. It turns inward, right? Now people are just jacked up. People are more anxious, and then you're peddling fear porn everywhere. So these people are just jacked up. They're just sitting at home for weeks, months on end, like not going outside, literally not going outside. Not socially gathering, not going to any parties or social events, not going to work, not doing any. This is a recipe for disaster. Like anyone who has you don't need to read a study for everything. Yeah. Right?
Just use logic.
Just use logic, right? Yeah. I know that if someone's already being punished for a crime and they're in prison, and they really want to extra punish them, what do? Solitary confinement. Right? Right? You put someone, you isolate people. Yeah. We're social creatures. Yeah. People go nuts. It's horrible. Yeah. Like being isolated.
We need other people. Yeah.
We need other people. We need meaning. We need purpose. We need work. We have to do labor. We have to exercise. We have to. But
to argue the point you were saying earlier, like, and I know you were kind of making fun of it, if you flipped it around for men are the ones that are working the most, right? They're like, if we wanted to make that a problem, men are the ones that are going. I do think, hopefully, there would still be, men would maybe still be that part of the workforce who are the plumbers who are building rooms like this. Even in an AI world, you're going to need physical workers.
But I don't know. Robotics. Once robotics and AI combine,
that would be really scary. Yeah.
It can happen. If that's where they want to push it. Yeah. They can. Like 2 years ago. Yeah. I was having a conversation with a friend. We were talking about all the AI. We were actually specifically talking about AI in music, right? And I was hearing some electronic songs or like ambient sort of tracks which were AI generated. And I remember explicitly saying that rap would be one of the hardest genres to AI away, right? Because the rappers have our voice and our cadence and our rhythm and our way of rhyming, and it's so unique, right? The way Jay-Z raps, the way 50 Cent raps, the way Snoop Dogg raps, the way any rapper, like you have like it's an ID that can't just be replicated. Yeah. And then this week, you got songs with Kanye West and Jay-Z, and it sounds exactly like them, and it's just, and keep in mind, this is the primitive version. This is the primitive version. This is not the advanced version of it. It's like, oh boy. Yeah. Okay, what are we doing? This is a huge Pandora's box, and I tweeted the other day that human beings are the only species, both intelligent and stupid enough, to engineer our own destruction. Right?
Yep.
And I think that's so true. Whether you're talking hyper advanced AI and this mindless rush to push it all, whether you're talking about, nuclear, we already have enough nuclear bombs in the world to obliterate every single human being on this planet. We have so many technologies with indirect or direct destructive capacity. And I think it's remarkable. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a species that has made itself extinct. Right? I think it's all been like factors against their control.
Yep.
And I'm like, human beings are the only ones, we're both smart enough and stupid enough that we could literally go extinct before we're supposed to.
Yeah.
Because we just have a nuclear war, or because we don't breed, or don't even propagate our own species by breeding enough.
Yeah.
Or we bring in some
It's already
AI
a problem.
robotics. It's a massive problem. That's a whole podcast. We bring in all this robotics and AI that completely supplants people to the point that there's no need for humans. There's no need for families. There's no need for any type of labor or anything. And everyone, have you seen WALL-E, where everyone's
Yep.
just in the seats and they're just these sort of fat blobs flying around.
That's good.
It's concerning. And through all this, and I say all this as someone who is ultimately bullish on humanity, right? And who's an optimist.
Yeah,
So
you're positive. You're
not
positive.
coming from this. Yeah. But I think in being positive, you have to sound alarms.
You have to be critical. Yeah.
You have to be critical, and you have to sound alarms, and you have to sometimes at least do your best to try to pause and say, hey, wait guys, wait, have you considered this, right? If you're, if a plane is going to take off, they do a lot of checks, right? You don't just, everyone all aboard, let's go.
Yep.
It's like, wait, hold up. If someone check, have you checked the wheels? Have you checked the wings? Have you opened the windows? Make sure there's let's check the weather.
Yeah.
Every single check that you can do, be very, very careful and meticulous. And it's like, okay, cool. Now we can go, and we know our destination.
Yep.
We're not going to overshoot it. We're not going to we're trying to fly to New York and we just, end up in the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
It's very specific and it's targeted, and the goal is clear. Our aim is to get from A to B, and then we don't overshoot. We get everyone off. But I think socially, culturally, technologically, we're in this sort of blind rush of just go, progress, right? I mean, if you have a car, is it better to accelerate or brake?
Brake.
Well, I would say it depends, right?
Well, hopefully not to hit somebody.
I'd say braking is it's not a bad answer, but my point is that you need both, right? Car needs an accelerator, a brake, a reverse gear, a steering wheel, because just moving, rushing in a direction, any direction is not progress, is not inherently good, is not inherently positive. It's
we think that though sometimes.
That's what I mean.
Because it's just evolving.
It's change.
Yeah.
It's change. It's progress. And I'm like, well, not all change is progress.
Yeah.
Right?
We might have regressed quite a bit.
You can regress. You can go backwards. And when you look at so many statistics, again, coming back to talking about the USA, or to talk about Western Europe, over the last 20 years, over the last 30 years, if you look at obesity rates, up, just constant trajectory. If you look at drug overdose rates, it's gone up, I think, 5-fold in the last 20 or 25 years. If you look at depression rates, look at self-harm rates, especially amongst young people, you look at the rate, there's disturbing trends upwards and downwards in things where it's okay, we don't just need a break, we need a reversal in this.
Yeah.
If this is not reversed, so if obesity keeps trending in the way it is, we will reach a stage in, say, about a century where everybody is obese. If it keeps going as it is, you'll reach a stage where everybody, maybe you'll have 3% holdouts. They'll probably give them some type of name, right? They'll give them some name to marginalize them, right? Just right? They'll give them some name. But that's where the USA will end up on its current path.
Yeah.
You'll end up at a stage where you've gone from 5% to 10% to 20%. Now it's at about 40%.
Yeah.
Right? If you give it a go, 45, 50. See, you'll get to a stage where it's okay, everyone is now obese, or you get to a stage where, okay, virtually everyone is now depressed. life expectancy in the UK is now going down.
Yeah, like in the report just came out the other day on the US. It's at 76.
Yeah, it was 78 before.
Yeah,
that's never happened. That's
2 years in a row.
That's never happened before.
Yeah.
Right, like
we were always like, we're gonna live to 100. You remember growing up? Like, we're all gonna live to 100 eventually when we get older. And now we're like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah,
it's going down.
It's going down. Yeah, so stuff like that is it's concerning, and it's not wise to. I don't think the right answer is to get black-pilled and become a doomer and this embrace the decline. It's all over. The Klaus Schwab and the WF are going to win. We're going to own nothing and we're going to be happy. And right. That's not the mindset. But I don't think the right mindset also is just like stick your head in the sand and act like none of it is happening. Because there's people who also take that approach and they're just like, oh, like it's not. And I'm like, well, I mean, you can ignore it, but at some point it's going to come and slap you in the face, right? Or it's going to slap your children in the face, or it's going to, at some point the rubber's going to meet the road. Yeah. And this thing that you don't think affects you, it will.
Yeah.
It might not yet, but it will. Give it time. Let it go. Let it grow. Let it fester, and you'll see how it becomes a problem.
So, I guess. Taking it back to the positive, to the end of the podcast now, but a few more questions. One is, for people like me, I would say I don't really love that people classify themselves as like, I'm a pessimist, I'm an optimist, I'm a realist. But if I had to pick, I would say like I'm a realist, but a lot of this stuff going on right now really. It makes me a little pessimistic, honestly. Sure. And it's hard to find, okay, these are the problems. It's easy to point at the problems and be like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. What do you feel like, and there's not obviously a solution for anything, but where do people find hope? Like, where should people be going to find this purpose if everything's getting pulled from them left and right, their identity, their jobs, their money, whatever it may be? How do you find that?
Yeah. Well, as a religious man, I'm going to have to say God. That's really the core foundation. And I know some people will not like that answer, but the fact that some people don't like that answer probably means it's even more important that I have to say it. But on top of that, I would say that, we need to go back to the foundations. The foundations that allowed a country like the USA or the UK or like the foundational principles that allowed for such prosperity and for so much excess and therefore decadence over time, we need to go back to the principles that founded that. We need to go back to family. We need to go back to, love your neighbor as yourself. We need to go back to freedom of speech. I may disagree with you, but I, support your right to say what you want to say. We need to go back to core ethics and morality. We need to go back to selflessness and charity, not just in terms of giving, but in terms of being charitable towards other people and their opinions and our interpretations of those things. We need to go back to kindness. We need to go back to having a concept of honor and duty. We need to go back to personal responsibility, right? I never hear the terms honor and duty anymore. These have been bled out of Western culture.
Yeah.
Right? If you're in Japan, you'll hear about honor and duty. If you're in the Middle East, you'll hear about honor and duty. If you're in many parts of Africa, you'll hear about honor and duty. But in the West, it's just narcissism. It's me, what makes me happy, what makes me in the moment, like me. I have a right to do this. Rights are incredibly important. I'm a big liberty guy, right? Rights are important, but every right comes with a liberty. Sorry, every right comes with a responsibility. And there are also duties and there are codes, right? Again, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, right? What if that thing is dishonorable, right? What if there's something you don't always want to do or feel like doing, or doesn't always make you happy, but you have a duty, right? If you are if you're a parent and you have children, right? I'm not there yet, will be, right? But you have a duty to your children, right? I'm sure there's billions of parents around the world who sometimes they don't want to go to work, right? They wake up in the morning and they're tired, maybe because of their kids, and they don't, but you know what? You go to work because it's your duty. It's not, I have a right not to go to work.
Yeah.
I have a right, screw your right, bro. No, right? You have a duty. The duty supersedes your personal feelings in that moment. You see what I mean? So I think that everybody, and I think this is why these the real solutions are difficult because they do fall on personal responsibility. There's not some magic policy that some politician can create that suddenly, returns everything to this, right? Each individual just needs to say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna step up in my own way, and I'm gonna do my best to behave better, treat people better, work harder, learn more, obtain more skills, act more virtuously, whatever it is. If each individual does that, then, like for example, what's the solution to the obesity crisis? I don't believe it's a policy. You and I have access to the exact same food as everybody else, and the same gyms and the same outdoors. If we want to go for a walk, we all have kind of access to the same stuff. And it's your personal choice, right? If I choose to eat like a pig and I balloon up to 400 pounds, that's me. I can't just blame the food company. I can't just blame the advertising companies. Well, people can and do, but it's a cop-out. It's weak, right? Yes, they should stop putting garbage in the food. We need to bring down the seed oils and not put high fructose corn syrup in so much stuff and this and this. Like, there's things that can be done for betterment, but ultimately people make choices. People make their choices, right? And so I think we need to create incentives and an overall culture and environment that makes, do you know what we need to do? Here's what we need to do. Here's the solution, Aubrey. We need to make virtue and goodness and personal responsibility and achievement and honor and duty, we need to make them cool again. We need to have a society and a culture where the things that are considered cool are the things that are actually positive and wholesome and good for individuals and good for the collective and good for the nation and good for, that's really what we need. I think at the moment, a lot of stuff that's trendy or like culturally cool or whatever, ultimately it's destructive. It's self-destructive, it's bad for individuals, it's bad for the collective as a whole, and so people are doing all these things. Young people are always going to do whatever's considered cool. Right? That's the truth. Young people will do.
Back to what you were saying, the reward system, right? The reward system would have to align with that for it to ever work out.
Yes, and it used to. That was my point. It used to, right? Before, if you were a man, it's like, hey, go this way, and you go this way, and go this way, and you'll be rewarded for it. If you create a society and a culture where actually being like a bad dude, right? Like that's more rewarded than being like virtue, then you're gonna get more guys going, actually, that's the way to go. Because, hey, those are the guys that girls are dating, or those are the guys who are earning money, or those are the guys who are doing this or this. And man, I'm one man. I don't have the ultimate solution for, everything, but I believe that, a core part of my role in this world is to do my best to nudge people. There's a lot of forces nudging people in what I consider to be a bad and destructive direction. So I simply do my best to nudge people in the other way. For every voice that's out there being a doomer or being pessimistic or teaching garbage or lying, not telling the truth, we need more people who are telling the truth and being honorable and promoting virtue and all that. You have to tell a better story. You have to give better options. And, where you can, you have to actually give people the tools to, people the tools to help themselves, because ultimately you can't directly, lift other people up. You can't do the work for other people, but you can give people the tools, the knowledge, the encouragement. That's very important. The inspiration, the motivation. People really need encouragement. That's something that's very much lacking. Both men and women, people need encouragement. People who are doing a good job, they need to be told, hey, you're doing a good job. I'm proud of you. Keep it going. And some people don't get a lot of encouragement, sadly. I'm blessed to all my life growing up, from my parents, from my siblings, from my teachers. I've had a lot of encouragement. And I think I owe some of my success to the fact that people told me, hey man, like you can do this. Like you've got greatness within you. Hey, good job. Like you're doing well, because that keeps you going that way. So we need to encourage people. So yeah, shout out to all the people. I'll tell you who. Shout out to all the fathers and the mothers, all the parents who are like raising good children and doing their best to actually, because it's such a, it is kind of thankless. right? There's not we have all these silly days celebrating nonsense.
Yeah.
Where's the day that's just like big up to the parents? Yes, we get one Mother's Day, we get one Father's Day, but like, we need some day. Why isn't there a month of just like celebrating parents, celebrating family, just like, good job, right? Like, thank you.
Do you think so? Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do. I say this with my parents often because it becomes more obvious the older I get.
Yeah.
Like how good a job they did.
Oh yeah.
So I often tell my friends, just like, thank you guys. Like, thank you for the opportunities.
It's winning the lottery, in my opinion.
Yeah. Like, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
People
much.
want to talk about privilege. Like, that's the real privilege.
No, every time I'm like, I was born in the United States. My parents are still married. I had good parents. Like, I had a really happy family. I don't really complain about much.
Yeah.
There's not really much for me to complain about. I'm more trying to spread and talk about other things that are affecting people from achieving a life like that, you know, now in my life.
And that needs to be encouraged, you know. One more thing I think that's really important is, you know, society does need standards. I think that either out of resentment or out of misplaced compassion, I think a lot of people kind of have this idea that just because a standard is difficult or because some people may fall short of it, that means that either the standard is wrong or does not exist. Do you see what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
So what you just described with your parents, right? They've been married for decades, 31 years, fantastic. My parents have been together 46 years, still together, great family. You know, myself, they've raised 5 children, got 10 grandchildren, you know. This should be the standard.
Yeah.
This should be the aspiration.
Yeah.
Just because that is maybe difficult to achieve, or some people may fall short of it for various reasons, that doesn't mean that we abolish the standard. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, we're not lowering the bar.
Yeah, you don't then say, oh, well, because that's hard to do, so let's just blow up the
You wouldn't do
standard.
that in the Olympics. You wouldn't be like, well,
Yeah, so
we're actually going to make this easier for everybody. Let's just take it down a notch. We're not jumping this high.
yeah, there's no more. So it's important to maintain those aspirational standards that people can aspire towards, and it doesn't mean that you're cruel or supremely inflexible towards people who don't reach this ideal, right? Same with health and fitness.
Yeah.
It's hard to be in shape,
Yeah.
right? It's hard to be physically fit and maintain a healthy body. It takes effort. But the fact that it takes effort and it's difficult, and actually in this modern time, most people are not at that standard, that doesn't mean that you obliterate the that doesn't mean that suddenly, oh, you can be healthy at any size, or fat acceptance, body positivity, like actually you can just be morbidly obese and that's just as good as being, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
This doesn't mean, oh, so you're saying you should be mean, you should bully people for being fat? No, I'm not saying that. Be kind to everybody.
Yeah.
But also, if you actually are genuinely kind and loving, you should want people to fulfill their potential and to be the best that they can be.
And also not lie to them that they're they're at a health risk. Yes. You know, if they are at a health risk, you know, if they're not, then okay. But you know, if they're not actually healthy, it's awful to tell someone that they are.
Yeah.
You know,
it's cruel. It's not kind. It's cruel.
Just, God, but I just admire so much of your bravery, because every time I see your tweets, I'm like, thank God there's at least one voice, right?
Oh, thank you.
Just pointing things out, just shedding light, communicating very succinctly and very clearly, so that, you know, you're not trying to use jargon, you're not trying to confuse anybody, you're not trying to mislead anybody. And honestly, I love that you're very, I would say that you kind of like go back on both sides of things too. You're pretty impartial on things. Obviously, you have your opinions, but everyone does. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And I would love for people to obviously follow your podcast as well. And do you want to plug
Yeah,
anything?
sure thing. Well, thank you, Aubrey. I appreciate it. We had a great conversation. My podcast is Real Talk with Zuby.
Yep.
So that's available on YouTube or all the usual platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. You can find me on all social media at Zuby Music. That is Zuby Music. I'm on Twitter, heavy on there. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook at Zuby Music.
Follow this man on Twitter. You won't regret it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Zuby.
Thanks, Aubrey.